The research vessel, Starlight Pioneer, drifted helplessly through the endless black of the void sector, 8.47 light-years from the nearest inhabited system. The sleek silver hull, designed by the methodical Zenthari engineers, reflected the distant starlight like a mirror floating in an ocean of darkness. Inside, red warning lights bathed the corridors in an ominous glow. Captain Tay stood rigid on the bridge, his logical mind working through survival calculations with mechanical precision. His pale blue skin, typical of his species, had taken on an even more ashen tone as the reality of their situation sank in. The bridge around him hummed with the desperate activity of his crew, but their movements had the careful restraint that came with accepting the inevitable. Engineer Ha worked frantically at her console, her four-fingered hands dancing across holographic displays that showed cascading system failures. Sparks occasionally flew from damaged circuits, filling the air with the sharp smell of burning electronics. The quantum drive's primary containment field had collapsed 3 hours ago, and the secondary systems were failing one by one. "Captain," Ha called out, her voice carrying the controlled calm that her people prized above all else. "The quantum resonance chamber has completely destabilized. I'm reading a 47% power loss across all primary systems." Tay moved to her station, his tall, thin frame moving with practiced efficiency. Around them, the bridge crew continued their work. Communications Officer Min monitoring long-range sensors, Science Officer Yoon cataloging their research data, and Navigator So plotting their impossible distance from home. "Life support will fail in 43.7 days, Ha reported, her large black eyes reflecting the red emergency lighting. "The recycling systems are operating at 23% efficiency. No civilization ventures into this region. We are mathematically doomed." The void sector had earned its name honestly. This region of space sat in the emptiness between galactic arms, where even the bravest explorers feared to travel. Ancient space debris drifted here like ghostly reminders of civilizations that had tried and failed to cross the gap. Some said creatures lived in this darkness, beings that fed on ship energy and left only empty hulks behind. Captain Tay nodded grimly, his logical mind already accepting what his calculations told him. He moved to the communications array, a crystalline structure that hummed with barely contained energy. His fingers moved across the controls with the precision of someone who had performed this action countless times, though never in such desperate circumstances. "All crew, this is the captain," his voice echoed through the ship's corridors. "Our situation is challenging. We will maintain standard procedures and continue our research until the end." The distress beacon activated with a soft chime that seemed almost cheerful given their situation. The signal would travel outward at light speed, carrying their location and plea for help into the cosmic void. Tay knew the mathematics. By the time any potential rescuer could receive their signal and reach them, they would have been dead for decades. Engineer Ha continued working at her station, occasionally muttering in her native language as she rerouted. Power from non-essential systems. The ship's corridors had already dimmed to conserve energy. Only critical areas maintained full lighting. "I've managed to extend life support by 2.3 days, she announced. "But the quantum core is beyond repair. We would need a complete replacement, and that technology doesn't exist in portable form." Through the bridge's main view screen, space stretched endlessly in all directions. No stars showed nearby, only the faint glow of distant galaxies that might as well have been painted on the darkness. Occasionally, strange lights flickered in the distance, possibly other ships that had met similar fates, or perhaps the mysterious energy phenomena that made this region so dangerous. Science Officer Yoon looked up from her research station. "Captain, should we prepare the data pods for emergency transmission? Our survey of the quantum anomalies in this sector could be valuable to future expeditions." Tay considered this. Even in death, the Zenthari commitment to scientific advancement remained strong. "Yes, prepare all research data for continuous broadcast. Perhaps our discoveries will prevent other vessels from sharing our fate." The bridge fell into quiet efficiency as each crew member focused on their final duties. Navigator so plotted their drift pattern, calculating where their ship might end up if found centuries from now. Communications Officer Min continued monitoring for any impossible response to their distress call, though they all knew none would come. The Starlight Pioneer had been exploring the strange quantum fluctuations that rippled through this empty region when disaster struck. These energy waves seemed to appear from nowhere, disrupting normal space-time in ways that fascinated scientists but terrified ship captains. One particularly powerful surge had overwhelmed their quantum drives. Safety systems. Captain Tay activated the distress beacon one final time, though both he and his crew knew it was futile. In the cosmic void between galactic arms, where no rational species would dare to venture, death was as certain as mathematics itself. The signal pulsed outward into the darkness, carrying their desperate plea to an empty universe that had already forgotten they existed. Weeks passed like a slow countdown to oblivion. The Starlight Pioneer had become a tomb drifting through the cosmic darkness, its once bright corridors now lit only by dim emergency lighting that cast eerie shadows on the walls. The crew moved through their daily routines with the mechanical precision their species was known for, even as death crept closer with each passing hour. Captain Tay stood in the ship's main laboratory, watching Engineer Ha methodically catalogue their remaining resources. She moved between storage compartments with practiced efficiency, scanning each item with a handheld device that beeped softly as it recorded the data. Her movements had grown slower over the past weeks, not from despair, but from the careful energy conservation that had become second nature to them all. Food supplies down to 31.2 days at current consumption, Ha reported, her voice maintaining its professional tone despite the grim news. Water recycling is operating at 18% efficiency. The filters are degrading faster than anticipated. The ship's food synthesizers had failed during the second week, forcing them to rely on emergency rations that tasted like cardboard but provided essential nutrients. The crew had reduced their daily intake to stretch their supplies, though they all knew it only delayed the inevitable by a few precious days. Science Officer Yoon looked up from her research station, where she had been working tirelessly to complete their data analysis. "Captain, I've finished documenting the quantum anomaly patterns we detected before the drive failure. The energy readings are unlike anything in our databases." She activated a holographic display that showed swirling patterns of impossible colors, the visual representation of quantum forces that existed beyond normal space-time. The data was beautiful in its complexity, showing how reality itself seemed to bend and twist in this forgotten region of space. "These anomalies appear to be artificial," Yoon continued, adjusting the display to highlight specific patterns. The mathematical precision suggests they were created by some form of advanced technology, perhaps an ancient species that lived here millions of years ago. Navigator So moved closer to examine the data, his pale blue skin reflecting the hologram's strange light. Could these anomalies be what destroyed our drive? If they're artificial, perhaps they were designed as some sort of defense system. The thought was both fascinating and terrifying. The Xanthari had always believed they were among the most advanced species in the galaxy, but the evidence before them suggested something far beyond their understanding had once existed in this empty region. Captain Tay nodded thoughtfully. "Continue. Your analysis. Even if we cannot survive to share this discovery, future expeditions must be warned about the dangers here." Communications Officer Min had spent most of her time monitoring their distress beacon and scanning for any possible response. The long-range sensors showed nothing but empty space, though strange energy signatures occasionally appeared at the edge of their detection range, ghostly echoes that could have been other ships or perhaps something else entirely. "Captain," Min called out, her voice tight with controlled excitement. "I'm detecting another energy surge building approximately 50,000 kilometers off our starboard bow. It's similar to the one that damaged our drive. Through the main view screen, space seemed to shimmer like water disturbed by an invisible hand. Colors that shouldn't exist in normal space rippled across the darkness, deep purples and impossible. Greens that hurt to look at directly. The phenomenon lasted for several minutes before fading back to normal starlight. "Incredible," Yoon whispered, frantically recording the data. The quantum disturbance created a temporary fold in space-time. For a moment, that region existed outside normal physics. Engineer Ha continued her work with grim determination, now focused on preparing their research data for emergency transmission. She had rigged the ship's remaining power systems to broadcast their discoveries continuously, hoping that someday another vessel might receive the information. Perhaps someone will find our research useful, Ha said quietly, inputting their final data into the transmission array. The cold logic of their situation was undeniable, but at least their deaths might serve a scientific purpose. The crew had established a routine that helped maintain their sanity during these final weeks. Each morning, they would gather in the Curie ship's small common area to share their remaining breakfast rations and discuss the day's work. They spoke of their research, their families back home, and the scientific mysteries they would never solve. Captain Tay had begun recording personal messages for each crew member's family, carefully documenting their final days for the historical record. He spoke of their courage, their dedication to scientific advancement, and their acceptance of an unavoidable fate. The ship's automated systems continued their slow decline. Life support recyclers groaned with increasing frequency, and the artificial gravity fluctuated enough to make walking difficult. The hull creaked softly as thermal stress from the failing environmental systems caused the metal to expand and contract. Navigator so had calculated their exact drift pattern, determining that their ship would eventually be drawn into a nearby asteroid field in approximately 847 years. At least we'll have a proper burial ground, he joked, with typical Zenthari dry humor. Despite their acceptance of death, Captain Tay continued sending distress signals into the void every few hours. Each transmission carried the same message: their location, their situation, and their research data. He knew the mathematical impossibility of rescue, but logic demanded they maintain all possible survival protocols until the end. The signals pulsed outward into the cosmic darkness, traveling at light speed toward distant stars that might harbor civilizations advanced enough to receive them. But by the time any potential rescuer could respond, the Starlight Pioneer would be nothing but a cold metal tomb drifting through space. Against all mathematics and probability, a crackling voice broke through their communications array like lightning splitting the darkness. The sound made Communications Officer Min nearly fall from her chair as static-filled words echoed across the bridge of the Starlight Pioneer. "Ahoy there, folks. This is Captain Jin of the cargo hauler, Lucky Strike. Heard your distress call." "Loud and clear. We're about 6 days out, maybe less if we push the engines hard enough." The bridge fell into absolute silence. Every crew member stopped what they were doing and stared at the communication console with expressions of pure shock. The voice had spoken in perfectly understandable galactic standard, but with an accent none of them had ever heard before. Casual, warm, and completely lacking the formal protocol used by all civilized species. Engineer Ha stared at her instruments, in complete disbelief, her four-fingered hands trembling slightly as she ran diagnostic after diagnostic on their communication array. "Captain, the signal is genuine. It's a human vessel. But this is impossible. Humans are a recent species. From the rim worlds. How could they possibly be here?" Captain Tay felt his logical mind struggling to process this information. He moved quickly to the ship's central database, his pale blue fingers dancing across the holographic interface as he pulled up everything they knew about the species called humans. The data files were relatively small. Humans had only made contact with galactic civilization about 50 years ago. They were described as a bipedal species from a planet called Earth, located in the outer spiral arm of the galaxy. The reports painted them as unpredictable, emotional, and prone to making decisions that defied logical analysis. According to our records, Tay said, reading aloud for his crew, humans are known for chaotic behavior and irrational decision-making. They operate on something called intuition rather than mathematical certainty. No logical species would venture into the void sector. Science Officer Yoon pulled up additional files on her station. "Captain, look at this. Human vessels are classified as primitive by galactic standards. Their fastest ships can barely achieve 0.7 times our normal cruising speed, even if they had left their home system the moment we sent our first distress signal. They couldn't possibly reach us for several months. Navigator, so was frantically checking his calculations, running the numbers again and again. The nearest human colony is over 200 light-years from here. At their maximum recorded speed, it would take them 47.3 days minimum to reach our position. This makes no mathematical sense. The human voice crackled through the speakers again, seemingly oblivious to the confusion it was causing. Hey, you folks still there? Don't worry, we've got plenty of supplies and a really good engineer. Never met a broken ship we couldn't patch up somehow. Captain Tay composed himself and activated the communication array. His hands shook slightly, the first time his crew had ever seen their captain display any emotion other than calm logic. Lucky. Strike, this is Captain Tay of the Zenthari research vessel, Starlight Pioneer. Your arrival here defies all probability calculations. Please confirm your current position and how you achieve such impossible travel time. A burst of what sounded like laughter came through the speakers, followed by the human captain's cheerful reply. Math never stopped us before, Captain. We heard your signal about 3 weeks ago and figured somebody needed help. As for how we got here so fast, well, let's just say we know a few shortcuts that aren't in the official star charts. Engineer Ha's instruments suddenly detected another energy signature approaching from the direction of the signal. Captain, I'm reading a vessel on approach vector. Mass displacement suggests it's much smaller than a standard research or military ship. The engine signature is unusual. On the main view screen, a small point of light grew steadily brighter against the cosmic darkness. As it came closer, the alien crew could make out the shape of what could only be described as the most bizarre spacecraft they had ever seen. The human ship looked like it had been assembled from spare parts found in a junkyard. Its hull was a patchwork of different metals, some clearly not original to the vessel. Strange modifications jutted out at odd angles, and what appeared to be external cargo containers were welded directly to the main structure. By all galactic engineering standards, the ship should have torn itself apart the moment it engaged its engines. By the cosmic void, Navigator so whispered. How is that thing even holding together? Communications Officer Min was monitoring the human vessel's transmissions and detecting multiple energy signatures that made no sense according to their understanding of physics. Captain, their power readings are completely erratic. It's like they're running their entire ship on controlled explosions. The human voice came through again, now much clearer as the distance decreased. Starlight Pioneer, this is Captain Jin. Again. We can see you on our screens now. Looks like you folks are in quite a pickle. Don't worry though, we've been in worse situations than this. One time we had to outrun a black hole with nothing but emergency thrusters and sheer stubbornness. Captain Tay found himself unable to form a proper response. Everything about this situation violated the natural order of the universe as he understood it. Humans simply shouldn't be here, their ship shouldn't be functional, and their casual attitude toward what should be certain death was beyond comprehension. Lucky strike, he finally managed to transmit. Your arrival here defies all known laws of physics and probability. Math never stopped us before, came the cheerful reply. Hold tight, folks. We've got coffee brewing and some spare parts that might just do the trick. We'll have you back up and running in no time. The lucky strike materialized from hyperspace 3 hours before anyone expected them. The cargo hauler's engines were glowing red hot, and strange sparks danced across its hull like tiny lightning bolts. Inside the Zenthari command center, Admiral Ha's tentacles twitched with nervous energy. How did they get here so fast? Ha muttered, studying the readings. Their ship wasn't built for those speeds. The answer came soon enough when Captain Jin's voice crackled through the communicator, sounding far too cheerful for someone who'd just pushed an aging cargo vessel to its breaking point. Permission to come aboard? We brought tools and a really bad idea that might actually work. Minutes later, Jin and Engineer So stepped through the airlock like they were visiting friends for dinner instead of boarding an alien warship in the middle of a crisis. So carried a battered toolbox that looked older than some planets, while Jin had a canvas bag slung over his shoulder that clinked mysteriously with each step. Your quantum drive, So announced, pulling out a handheld scanner that appeared to be held together with electrical tape and wishful thinking. Show me what's broken. Ha led them through corridors filled with precise geometric patterns and soft blue lighting. The Zenthari crew they passed moved with calculated efficiency, their large eyes tracking the humans with a mixture of curiosity and concern. Everything about the ship screamed order and careful planning, from the perfectly aligned wall panels to the quietly humming machinery. The quantum drive chamber was a masterpiece of alien engineering. Crystalline matrices floated in electromagnetic fields, their surfaces pulsing with gentle energy. Diagnostic panels displayed thousands of readings in flowing Zenthari script. It was beautiful, complex, and completely dead. Temporal cascade failure, so observed, running his scanner over the main array. The device beeped and clicked like an agitated cricket. Your quantum field collapsed and took half the power grid with it. Nasty. Can you repair it? Ha asked hopefully. Our engineers estimate 14 cycles minimum for a proper fix. So grinned and pulled out what looked suspiciously like a wrench designed for plumbing repairs. Repair? Who said anything about repair? We're going to build a whole new one. The Zenthari bridge crew fell silent. Ha's tentacles drooped. Build. A new quantum drive? That's impossible. It takes specialized facilities, rare materials, months of careful calibration. Good thing we brought rare earth metals, Jin said, patting his bag. Mining run to the Kepler asteroids. Got some really nice stuff in the cargo hold. So was already moving, examining the chamber with the enthusiasm of someone who'd just found a really interesting puzzle. We'll need to reroute power through the secondary systems, bypass the safety protocols, and jerry-rig a field generator using your mining equipment. He paused, looking thoughtful. Oh, and we'll probably need your food replicator. Our food replicator. Hayes' voice climbed several octaves. Great electromagnetic coils in those things, so explained, already sketching diagrams on a tablet that looked like it had survived several explosions. Perfect for containing unstable quantum fields. What followed was the most terrifying display of human engineering Ha had ever witnessed. The humans worked with casual disregard for proper procedures, using tools that definitely weren't designed for quantum mechanics and materials that came from their cargo hold. So hummed while he worked, occasionally asking questions like, is this supposed to be glowing purple? And what happens if I cross these wires? They stripped components from the mining equipment with cheerful efficiency. Gravity manipulators became field generators. Ore processors were rewired into power regulators. The food replicator was carefully dismantled, its coils repositioned around a framework built from spare hull plating. This violates approximately 47 safety regulations, Ha whispered to his second-in-command. Probably more, so called out, having apparently overheard. But regulations are just suggestions when you're about to get eaten by space pirates. The improvised quantum drive took shape over the next few hours. It looked nothing like proper Zenthari technology. Cables snaked between mismatched components. Warning lights that should have been blue flickered in distinctly non-regulation colors. The whole assembly was held together with magnetic clamps, determination, and what appeared to be actual rope. Ready for testing, so announced, wiping his hands on a rag that might have once been white. Testing? Ha stammered. Shouldn't we run diagnostics first? Calculate field stability, check for resonance cascades. Jin laughed, the sound echoing, strangely, in the crystalline chamber. Where's the fun in that? Besides, we don't have time for math. Those pirate ships will be here soon. Zo's finger hovered over a big red button that definitely hadn't been there an hour ago. Cross your tentacles, Admiral. This is either going to work brilliantly or create a very pretty explosion. He pressed the button. The improvised drive hummed, sparked, and then settled into a steady rhythm that sounded almost musical. Around them, the ship's lights flickered back to full brightness. Impossible, Ha breathed. Humans don't really do impossible, Jin said with a grin. We just do improbable very, very loudly. The impossible drive hummed to life with a sound that reminded Ha of ancient Zenthari wind chimes mixed with barely contained chaos. Energy readings spiked across every monitor, then settled into patterns that made absolutely no sense according to quantum physics textbooks, but somehow worked perfectly fine in reality. Well, would you look at that? So grinned, wiping grease from his hands. Sometimes the universe has a sense of humor. The Starlight Pioneer shuddered as power flowed back through systems that had been dark for days. Emergency lighting switched to normal operations. Life support systems kicked into high gear. Most importantly, the engines roared back to life, with a deep thrumming that vibrated through the deck plates. "Navigation online," reported Lieutenant Kex, his tentacles dancing across his control panel with renewed excitement. "Engines responding. We have propulsion capability." Captain Tay's mandibles clicked with amazement. "How is this possible? Your device shouldn't work. It violates the fundamental principles of quantum field dynamics." Jin shrugged, checking readings on his own scanner. "Maybe your principles need updating. Besides, it doesn't have to work forever, just long enough to get you home." The next few hours became a testament to human ingenuity and alien adaptability. The improvised quantum drive, held together through sheer willpower and constant adjustments, so spent most of the journey crawling through maintenance shafts, tightening connections and muttering things like, "Come on, you beautiful disaster, just hold together a little longer." The Starlight Pioneer moved through space like a wounded bird learning to fly again. Its trajectory wasn't perfectly straight, and occasionally the ship hiccuped in ways that made seasoned space travelers nervous, but it moved. Forward, steady, and most importantly, away from the dead zone of the void sector. The Lucky Strike stayed close, her cargo hold now emptied of precious metals but filled with something more valuable, the satisfaction of a job well done. Jin kept up a steady stream of encouragement over the radio, treating the damaged explorer ship like a friend who needed moral support. "You're doing great, Pioneer. Just a few more hours, and we'll have you back to civilization." Think of it as the galaxy's most expensive tow job. He found himself fascinated by the human approach to crisis management. Where Xanthari protocols called for careful analysis and measured responses, the humans simply adapted and kept moving. When the makeshift drive started overheating, So didn't consult technical manuals. He grabbed whatever was handy and jury-rigged. A cooling system using the ship's air conditioning and some copper pipes from the galley. "Your people," Ha said to Jin during one of their communication breaks, "they don't think like other species." "Probably why we're still around," Jin replied. "Evolution favored the crazy ones who were too stubborn to die when they should have." The first sign of civilization appeared as a distant glimmer against the starfield. Beacon Station Alpha, a massive trading hub that served as a crossroads for dozens of space lanes. Ships from across the galaxy docked there daily, carrying goods, passengers, and news from distant worlds. As they approached, traffic control's voice filled the comm channels with bureaucratic efficiency. "This is Alpha Control to approaching. Vessels, please transmit identification codes and cargo manifests." "Alpha Control, this is Captain Tay of the Starlight Pioneer," came the response. "We're coming in under emergency protocols. Medical assistance may be required." There was a pause, then a different voice, more urgent. "Pioneer, this is Station Commander Vex. We've had search and rescue teams looking for you for 6 days. What's your status?" "Operational but damaged. We had assistance from..." Tay paused, looking at the readings that showed the human cargo ship keeping pace beside them, "from some very resourceful allies. The docking procedure took longer than usual. The Pioneer's improvised systems needed careful handling and docking. Control had to make allowances for the ship's tendency to drift slightly to port. Ground crews stood ready with repair equipment and medical teams, though they weren't sure what to expect. When the airlocks finally connected and the two crews met face to face, the contrast was striking. The Xanthari crew looked tired but relieved. Their usually perfect uniforms rumpled from days of crisis management. The humans looked like they'd been having the time of their lives, covered in grease stains and grinning like they'd just won the Galactic lottery. "Captain Jin," Tay said formally, his translator struggling slightly with the emotion in his voice, "how can we repay this debt? You risked your ship, your crew, your lives for strangers." Jin looked genuinely confused by the question. "Repay? You don't repay someone for doing the right thing. You were in trouble, we helped. That's just what people do." "Not all people," Tay replied quietly. "Many would have calculated the risks and decided the odds were too poor." "Well," So interjected, shouldering his battered toolbox, "humans aren't great at math anyway. We prefer to wing it and see what happens. Later, in the quiet of his temporary quarters aboard the station, Ha composed his report for the Zenthari High Command. His tentacles moved slowly across the input device as he tried to find words for what he'd witnessed. Humans, he wrote, operate outside conventional parameters. They ignore probability calculations, dismiss safety protocols, and attempt solutions. That logic declares impossible. They use coffee brewing equipment in quantum field repairs and treat certain death as merely an engineering challenge. He paused, considering his next words carefully. Recommendation: never underestimate human capabilities. Their refusal to accept defeat appears to be a species-wide trait. When conventional wisdom says a situation is hopeless, humans make coffee, gather whatever tools they have available, and start working. They succeed not because their methods are sound, but because they refuse to acknowledge that failure is an option. He looked up at the stars visible through his viewport, thinking about the cargo ship that was already preparing for its next run. Somewhere out there, other beings might need help, and somewhere out there, humans would be ready to provide it, armed with nothing but stubborn determination and an apparently limitless supply of improvised solutions. The galaxy, he realized, was a more interesting place with humans in it.